The Joe Rogan Experience.
I have to say, I have such news politics fatigue already. We're what, 2 months into the sort of presidency, and it is the velocity of bullshit.
Stupidity.
If you can get 1 million plays in a day because Trump got bopped on the nose by a boom mic, it just the appetite is, it seems endless for it. It just feels, it's exhausting. I'm kind of having to check out. And I know that people say, oh, well, it's a luxurious position. You don't need to pay attention to politics. It's a luxurious position for you to be in. People at the bottom, they do need to pay attention to politics. It's an interesting stat because actually the most educated, wealthiest people are the ones that spend the most time consuming news and talking about politics. It's the people at the bottom rung of the ladder that don't. So that's...
Yeah, no, that's kind of the problem here. That's why we got Donald Trump in office. Yes, if you're at the bottom rung of society, you understandably see politics for what it truly is. Something that rich people are doing with one another that is not going to impact your life in any way and only will impact your life in a negative way. Doesn't matter if you pay attention to it or not. That's why I'm so glad I had those 2 conversations with 2 different Uber drivers yesterday, okay? One was activated through podcast into believing a whole bunch of nonsense. The other one was completely tapped out of the subject after voting for Kamala Harris and not really liking the Democrats either. The reason why the second person was not really invested in politics is exactly what I'm talking about. If you can't activate people like her, I mean, think about it. Like, she's a black woman in the United States of America who's genuinely thinking about leaving the country, okay? Cost of living is out of control, and she sees the political instability, and she's like, maybe it's time to leave. Like, we're literally seeing if we can penny pinch our way out of here. This is a person that drives Uber. The reason why that person, I think I demonstrated fairly well to those who have the capacity to understand what I was doing in that conversation. The reason why that person is checked out is because there's no association for her with any sort of tangible policies that will improve her life. She does not hear that from the Dems at all. She also doesn't think the Dems are being genuine when they advocate for things. She literally said, yeah, Trump does stuff, but when he says something, he's going to do something. That's weakness twofold. That's it.
It's not true. I'm just exhausted. I'm so...
You're allowed to be exhausted. It's ridiculous. Newsweek wrote an article about how one of the names of one of our podcast guests, who's a good friend of mine, Michael Costa, his name was misspelled accidentally.
On the feed?
On the feed.
And
so
feed.
Newsweek...
Is that you, Jamie?
It wasn't even misspelled. I don't know. It was miscapitalized. It's the second letter had a capitalization too on accident, and I don't know.
The defense rests its case here.
It wasn't even misspelled, right? It was M-I, Michael Costa. Like me, Kyle Costa or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a headline.
It's an article in Newsweek.
Do you ever think that your career would result in you having typos for a headline, Jamie?
I can't. I don't even know which ones we've missed. I'm sure there's been other ones. That's just the first one.
100%. What happens? It happens. People make mistakes. You're typing things in.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's an article that we're being called out for a typo.
Must be
That's
a fucking...
an art, but it's just anything for clicks, man.
Slow week for news.
Anything for clicks.
That was something that I noticed, a trend that I've noticed over the last couple of years. Legacy media is really struggling to garner attention itself. It seems like fewer and fewer people are listening to it. We saw that over the last election. You know, it seems to me like the best way that legacy media can gain traffic is to talk about independent media.
Yeah.
How many times are we seeing headlines about Andrew Huberman or about the right-wing manosphere pipeline and how it's getting people to do this? Or the other side, like, why is there not a Joe Rogan of the left? Like, you know, whatever the headline is, more and more the way that legacy media is able to achieve traffic is only in reference to independent media.
Yes.
So then, as opposed to us being...
He's not wrong. I mean... This is correct. These are 2 guys that I don't agree with, but he's right about this. I think the real problem with legacy media, however, is that legacy publishers have dropped the ball spectacularly over and over again for 2 reasons. One, for a good reason. Good reason as in, like, there's a good reason why people are saying, I don't trust you any longer, like Israel-related coverage, for example. And also, for a very bad reason why people don't trust legacy media is because of the faucet of misinformation that is infinitely easier to understand and read. These two issues work side by side with one another. If you are serially wrong in ways that people can comprehend quickly, they're not going to trust you any longer. Meanwhile, you have people hamming up parasocial relationships on the independent side of things where people genuinely think like, oh, Joe Rogan is my friend. Hassan is my friend. He's in my living room all day, every day. There's no way to compete with people like myself if you're a faceless journalist. That's it. Especially if the parasocial relationship-inducing commentary is also chock full of ridiculous misinformation that corresponds to the preconceived biases that people have. That's a huge problem. That is a huge issue. It's especially an issue for someone like myself because, like, I do work in combating misinformation with regular frequency. Ironically enough, my liberal naysayers and independent media consistently say I'm a misinformer. I'm the Alex Jones of the left. But there's a reason why a lot of these mainstream outlets understand my position in the independent sphere as someone who has an open position, who's not shy about revealing his position, but will actively go after misinformation and combat misinformation directly. So because of that, I can't work without real journalism. I can't work without real journalism. Joe Rogan can. He's just going to shoot the shit anyway. There's real journalism out there, and these guys still make it up, right? I can't just simply make it up. That's not my job. My job is to look at media and analyze it with a critical lens. But that still requires there to be real journalism happening, which is why I'm so terrified. But my point is, it's very hard to try and generate support for someone who is serially engaging in parasocial confirmation bias. It's virtually impossible. Joe Rogan doesn't need to convince his audience of his positions. His audience likes him because of his positions. Someone like myself, on the other hand, has to convince the audience of the positions because these positions are not one that are readily available in the wild. And kind of the same goes for mainstream news as well. Like, they have to maintain, as a part of their job, mainstream news outlets have to maintain the neoliberal agenda. They have to maintain the idea that everything you're experiencing, whether it be the cost of living crisis or whatnot, is actually fine. It's actually normal. It's a normal and healthy part of the process of capitalism. It's okay. Things are not as bad as you think they are. They have to normalize the harm that you're experiencing. It's a big part of what the Fourth Estate does. So in that regard, it's also very difficult for them to do that, especially in times of crisis. So when crisis comes around and the media keeps doing the same things that they do all the time to normalize the harm and pain that you're experiencing, only hyper-focus on the viewpoints of, like, I don't know, small business owners or whatever, ultimately, people like Joe Rogan, who are going to take advantage of that resentment and the anger that people feel, are going to win out against mainstream news, and they're going to do it with a chock full of misinformation. This dynamic exists in the duopoly and the last election cycle that took place. You have the Kamala Harris institution defenders running against a guy who wants to put a brick through the institutions. At a time when there's so much economic volatility, so much anger and resentment towards the living conditions that people experience, that they directly attribute to the institutions, yeah, of course people voted for the institution breaking party. Because the institution breaking party saw that anger and resentment and said, you're right to be angry, and you should be angry at, more appropriate targets, obviously, not like, corporations of the powerful, but instead gay corporations and the gay powerful or DEI. It is, however, alarming that so many people primarily get their information from the likes of Joe, and that they get their notes from Joe. Like, the things that Joe cares about, they care about too. And because he's so susceptible to misinformation that corresponds to his biases, people end up adopting the most idiotic positions, like the first Uber driver that we talked to. We're talking about Trans Sesame Street. Terrifying prospect for the future of this country.
Downstream from them, that now downstream from us.
Yeah, and anything masculine is right-wing.
Huh.
Anything. You cannot be masculine. Like, you cannot be interested in physical fitness, anything.
It's a pipeline to being right wing.
Yes. You can't like fast cars.
Nope.
You're not allowed to. You're not even allowed to like Teslas anymore, which are
Misogynist.
the fastest cars.
Yep.
Yeah, you're a misogynist. You're probably racist, maybe a Nazi. I'm going to put a swastika in your car just to let everybody know. There was some really stupid graph that someone put up of how right-wing social media and new media people
That was the Media
dominate.
Matters study. Yeah. This is
And
interesting.
I was
Jamie,
at the
can you try
top
and
of the
find that?
list. I was at the top of the list, and I was like, I feel like the way Caitlyn Jenner must have felt like when she won Woman of the Year. Like, it's so quick. I got to the top of the list. I'm not even right wing. Just because I support Trump, I supported him over the rest of the nonsense that was going on when you.
I hate this. I hate that he represents the median voter here. What do you mean I'm right wing? I just voted for the most right wing administration of all time after endorsing said administration. Joe Rogan is not a car guy? Yes, he is. You're wrong. He literally is a car guy. He's like a Porsche collector. He doesn't talk about it as much any longer, but he's always been he's a big car guy. He used to talk about it all the time. Actually, that just unlocked old memories of me listening to Joe Rogan. He loved cars back in the day. He used to talk about them nonstop. So many episodes. He would talk about his Porsche. He never actually talks about cars anymore. Now that you think about it, holy yeah, he's too busy eating Elon's every episode.
Trying to push through someone without even a primary.
Here it is.
This is it. I'm number one. It's kind of funny. Like, they're putting Theo Vaughn in
Lex
there.
Friedman.
Yeah, that's Lex Friedman. That's hilarious to put him in there. Who else they have in there that's ridiculous?
Piers Morgan.
Well, Piers Morgan is kind of right-leaning, I think.
Right.
But I think he's pretty...
Dog, Piers Morgan literally is more liberal than Joe Rogan on many issues. That is crazy. Like, Piers Morgan is definitely right-wing, okay? 100%. And even a guy that is definitely right-wing on 100%, definitely right-wing 100% on many issues, still can sometimes come across as more liberal than Joe Rogan.
reasonable. I think he's far more of a centrist.
Kill Tony 3.5. I still don't understand how that's a political show.
It's not, but Tony, was at the White House or the
Flagrant 2.8. Yeah.
Flagrant is not a right-wing show, you
They have
idiots.
a bunch of red dots too with no names on them, and then blue dots.
You're
too,
allowed
but
to. Shut up,
they
Jamie.
just
Stop
put
being...
names.
I managed to thread the needle of avoiding this.
You're going to get on there now.
yeah, well,
They're going to put you on now.
Yeah.
Jamie, those red ones are real. Just shut up.
No, I don't know.
No,
why
they're
they were-
real. They're all
Blue
real. There's a
ones,
couple of blue ones that are real,
Just
too.
put the name. I don't know why they did
The
that.
name.
Yeah.
They're too little to get
Too
a
small.
name.
No one cares. No one gives a
Yeah,
fuck.
it's hilarious. It's
Yeah,
very funny.
What do you think of the? Or if you got a proposed reason for why this? Is it just a judgment criteria that they're judging shows that aren't right wing as right wing, or is it genuinely that for some reason the left is struggling to make progress in independent media?
Well, they're struggling to make progress in independent media for sure, and they're trying to figure out why. They're trying to figure out why these, what they are calling right-wing. I think if you looked at all my positions, I think way more of them are left-wing than right-wing.
What are the left wing positions that you?
What? It ended at the best part. Do we have more? I need to see what his left positions are. You know what's crazy? Joe Rogan still maintains this like independent media posture, and in some ways, I guess he is, because he's like, owned and operated singularly. Like it's a one person shop, right? So it is technically independent. He's not a mainstream figure. I mean, he is a mainstream figure, but he's not mainstream media. But what's really interesting about it is like, bro, you glaze up billionaires in the same way that CNN does. Like, your output is not all that different from any number of different websites at this point, any number of different publications at this point. They also glaze billionaires. And it's oftentimes the same billionaires that they're glazing. It doesn't make any sense. What's also very funny, to me at least, is this notion that right-wingers are so, still to this day, even as Trump is in office, it's so funny that right-wingers are so embarrassed to be right-wing. They're so embarrassed to be branded as right-wingers, dude. They have to say like, oh, I have a lot of leftist opinions. I'm an independent thinker. I'm apolitical. It's like, dude, you voted for Trump. Like, what the do you mean you're apolitical? You endorse Trump. It's so stupid. You're right-wing and you don't agree with a lot of the things that the Republicans say, but not enough to not vote for them. You know what I mean? Your disagreements are not severe enough that you're like, I'm out. I'm not voting for these. That's it.
You still hold?
Well, the big one is having some sort of a social safety net. I was on welfare when I was a kid. My family was on food stamps. We were poor.
This is old school Joe. I used to hear this all the time, even though he said so many conflicting things about this now, with his like unconditional support for the likes of Ron DeSantis and shit.
I remember that helping us a lot. We had food, where I don't know what we would be doing if we did. I mean, we were in a bad place, and there's social safety nets for people. My family got out of that, and my stepfather and my mother wound up doing well. They did really great, and they got out of debt and bought a house and great job and the whole deal. But when I was a little boy, we were, and I think social safety nets are very important for people. It's very important for society. If you care about people, you care about the whole society. You don't want people starving when there's ways to develop government programs to make sure people have food. And I think that's this idea of pull them up by their bootstraps is horseshit. Some people don't have boots. They don't have straps. They don't have nothing. They're the moment they were born into a bad family environment, in a bad neighborhood, and crime and gangs and drugs, and it's not even playing field.
Where are you at with healthcare?
I think healthcare 100% should be socially funded. I think that Medicare and Medicaid, having programs where people who are hurt can get an operation and it's not going to bankrupt them for the rest of their life, is another thing that I think society should be. It should be a part of our agreement to take care of each other as a community, that we chip in money for what people would think of as socialist positions. And I always bring up the fire department because the fire department is one of the best examples that everybody sort of agrees. It's a socialist sort of thing. You give your tax dollars, the tax dollar supports the fire department fairly puts out fires for everybody. They don't not put out your fire if you don't have any money.
Yeah.
It's not like they don't, the fires don't.
It's such a good example, but when you compare that to the way that medical access is done, at least in this country.
But I also believe in competition. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I want my doctor to be a bad mother drives a Mercedes. I want my doctor to like be really good. I want him to be an artist. You know, I want to go to the guy who fixes the Lakers' knees. You know, that's the guy you want. You want that guy who has a nice watch and he lives in a nice house and he kicks ass and he knows how to fucking fix people really well. He's the best at it. And you go to him and you get an operation and you're golden. That's what you want. When you want competition, because competition inspires excellence. You know, being rewarded for your hard work is a giant incentive.
Wealth is a true demonstration of whether or not you have good moral values, whether or not you have a decent moral foundation. Because if you're rich, you're glorious, you're wealthy, you're successful, God has smiled upon you. If you're poor, you're a moral failure.
For people to get amazing at things. And you need that. You need that too. But there's also a lot of very good doctors who would be very happy to do something that helps the overall greater good of the community. Just like you have really good criminal defense attorneys that are, you know, assigned to you if you're, if you're getting unjustly tried, and you want a really good one that can help you. You know, there's state-appointed attorneys that are just good people that want to help people. You know, Bill Murray was talking about his daughter. His daughter does that. There's room for that with the amount of money that we spend on so many things that we all agree are. And maybe some of that could be freed up with some of this USAID money that they're pulling. I mean, there's nothing wrong with giving people health care. Like, if you know anybody that's been injured and was bankrupt because they didn't have insurance, and then they had to get some crazy operation, and now they have this enormous debt, and they wind up going bankrupt, or they're getting chased down for the money for the rest of their life. It's horrible.
It's the number one cause of bankruptcy in America.
Yeah.
Medical debt.
Yeah.
I mean, coming from the UK where we've got the NHS.
This is what I mean when I say, like, guys, this is what I mean when I say, oh, all this stuff is really and I wish we could solve them. But also, I don't hate the Republicans enough for actively making things worse. My expectation isn't that Joe Rogan needs to be a card-carrying Democrat and be like, I love Kamala Harris. She's going to fix healthcare. But you're actively glazing the Republicans in a way that someone like myself, as an independent broadcaster, never will glaze the Democrats. That's what's so frustrating about this process. He gets to maintain the idea that he is like apolitical, and a lot of people don't understand that, even after endorsing Donald Trump. But my position is diametrically opposed to the Democratic Party, and they say I'm a Clinton head. I'm a loyalist to the DNC, to the Democrats. Oh, you went to the DNC. It's like I got kicked out of the DNC too, okay? Trust. It's so stupid. Democrats can't confront their own Tea Party is so funny. This is not a Tea Party movement. The Tea Party was a AstroTurf movement funded by the Koch brothers. This is the opposite of a Tea Party movement. This is real, genuine anger and resentment from the Democratic voter base towards the Democrats for not doing anything, for not doing enough. Very, very frustrating. You've been historically kind of woke, bro. I know. I am, because I have real principles. I have a real commitment to the things that I say. I believe them. These are firmly held convictions. I'm not embarrassed by them. That's why it never frustrates me when Fox News will clip something that I've said that they disagree with that is in context, such as Hamas is the lesser evil in comparison to Israel. That is not an objectionable statement unless you just don't know what the facts are. What I get mad about is when people clip me out of context to act like I am advocating for things that I'm not advocating for. That's what's very frustrating to me. And maybe it's a little bit of neurodivergence that really pisses me off, where I have to constantly explain and re-explain over and over again what I truly meant. I'm very sincere about my worldview. I'm very open about it, which is weird because most people are not. The more successful content creators in the political sphere, whether they're podcasters or Twitch streamers, are oftentimes very insincere about their worldview. Anyway, here's my GOAT once again. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum, who has 80% approval rating, has officially recognized Palestine as a state. By the way, Claudia Sheinbaum is Jewish. 95% of Jews believe in Zionism, bro. 95% of Jews. Mexico's Jewish President Claudia Sheinbaum, who is a Jewish woman, okay, Mexico, more woke than America, turns out, has officially recognized Palestine as a state and welcomed the Palestinian ambassador. This is very symbolic because Sheinbaum is Jewish. She supports Palestinian human rights and criticizes Israel's attacks. She's listening to her base? No, this is a conviction that she had prior to being the president. What are you talking about? Sheinbaum was pro-Palestinian from the jump. If only we had a Morena-style party in the United States of America that was actively doing things that are popular for the broadest majorities, you know, improving their standing in society, for uplifting the working poor, expansion of welfare, none of which is technically even socialist. It is somewhat anti-capitalist, depending on how you do it, if it impacts companies' profit margins. Having said that, seemingly it leads to a lot of popularity, broad popular support, things that Democratic consultants will never experience the rest of their lives if they keep up this weird loyalty to third-way neoliberalism.